Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Pros Devy Show. Along SC Romero, Justin Taylor, and Andy Pham, I am Tommy Harvey. Tonight, we are going to dive into looking at the Devy relevant players in the Big 10, and we're going to go ahead and start that right now. How's it going tonight, guys?
Good.
Very good,
glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Ready to talk some Big 10. Let's get it.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get started, everybody go ahead and do us a favor. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe. If you'd like to know when we go live, just make sure to hit that notification bell. Let's go and jump into it, guys. Let's go and start talking about the Big 10 quarterbacks here, shall we? All right. Let's go and pop this up here. All right. I think there's probably 4, maybe 5 guys that are really, really Devy relevant. The rest of them are kind of just, kind of keep an eye on. Obviously, we got guys like Drew Aller, Devin Brown, J.J. McCarthy, Kyle McCord. Lincoln Kineholtz could be. We just have to see what all is going to happen there after this McCord and Devin Brown saga's finished up with. What do you guys think about this list we got here?
I think it's Drew Aller and really everyone else. I think Devin Brown and Kyle McCord are going to be a good quarterback, but I think that's more of the talent around them. Where Drew Aller, I think he's going to continue to rise boards. He has mediocre talent outside of Singleton and K-Tron, which we'll talk about here soon. But I think Aller's, going to rise to the occasion and do some great things. McCarthy's going to be interesting. I do want to see what we see in McCarthy. And really that bottom 6, they may get to the pros, but I don't really see them. They'll have good preseason games.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Like I said, Drew Aller, I'm really interested to see if Penn State's going to open it up a little bit with him this year. Obviously, he's got a ton of talent. The Big 10 is going to be Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State. And if he can get a signature win or two over one of those programs, and he can kind of really open it up, like SC said, not tons of offensive talent around him. Obviously, good running backs, but they can open it up a little bit. I just think he's got a chance that his value could just absolutely skyrocket this season. I like him a ton. It's just to be interested to see what Penn State is going to allow him to do and not do in that offense.
I think Aller has a ton of ability. I kind of look at him as being a Josh Allen type, just kind of that big bodied kind of guy who can get out and make plays with his legs, going to run you over. Doesn't really worry about getting hurt. Just going to go and do it. Got a big arm. I think Aller is probably a top 3 to 4 Devy quarterback overall. As far as Devin Brown and Kyle McCord go, I think Devin Brown is much more dynamic than what McCord is. So we'll kind of see what they decide on. If McCord doesn't win that job, I think you can kind of look at him as kind of just being fodder. And then you're really looking at Aller, Brown, and McCarthy as being the only 3 that have any type of real NFL potential at that point.
Yeah, for me, for the entire Big 10, I'm kind of down for their quarterbacks. With Drew Aller, he has a lot of hype behind him, but I just can't see James Franklin just opening that offense up. I think they're just going to run the ball, focus on that defense to keep them in games, just like pound the rock. So then you're going to have Drew Aller coming into his junior season and it's still going to be a what if. So as a whole, I'm down on the Big 10 quarterbacks, but they do have a lot of hype. Devin Brown, I think he's a much better option, but how good can he be? Because it's taken all this time for him to finally leapfrog and be potentially a starter. So I don't know.
I think one guy that is missing that's kind of like a raw prospect, and Tommy, you know this because you're in drafts with me, is Alex Orji, out at Michigan. That's great athlete, phenomenal player, but does he have everything put right? Does he understand the quarterback position and what he can be? He has a phenomenal arm. He can run the ball, but he's just a raw prospect, and it's definitely McCarthy over him. But he's someone that I'm continuing to watch. In Devy drafts and C2Cs, I'm getting him late rounds. These are your deeper leagues that you're going after him because he's not on the radar to necessarily start. But hey, man, if this guy's given the opportunity, he has that arm strength to just make it. He just has to get the fundamentals down and lock him in, and he could be something stellar. But it's a raw prospect that you're getting if you're looking at Alex there.
Well, he made Feldman's freak list, didn't he?
Yep, sure did.
Now, JT, I know you had mentioned a couple of quarterbacks also that aren't necessarily on the list. You're kind of high on Hudson Card. Go and tell us why there.
Yeah, I just think Hudson Card, the way that offense has gone the last couple of years, I know, Braum has moved on, so it's going to be interesting to see kind of, can they carry any of that former offense over? But Card's a guy's going to walk in there with a chance to play right away. And if they can keep that offense rolling the way they had kind of in the past, I know that, they brought over Illinois' defensive coordinator. Obviously, he's a defensive guy on that side of the ball, but I just think they've had a lot of success. I mean, look at Aiden O'Connell. I think Card's a much better prospect than Aiden O'Connell. And with Aiden O'Connell getting a little bit of a look here with the Raiders, that gets me a little bit excited about Card. I think he's, in Devy circles, his name hasn't really popped up, but he's a guy I'm keeping an eye out on because if he can come out and play pretty well here for Purdue, he's a guy I think can be kind of sneaky down the line.
Does the offensive system change not scare you off there at all?
That is the worry. I think if you had the old system there and he had won the starting job, I think you'd hear a lot more talk and hype about him. I think that is the worry are they going to be able to keep that offensive success they had in the past? And that is the big question. If they can, without, with a new coaching staff, I think that says a lot about Card. So he's a guy like right now, Devy, I'm not taking him anywhere, but he's a guy I'm looking at. He's a guy I'm definitely thinking about. If I'm looking for a deep guy on a C2C team and somebody I want to kind of hide on my bench as a possible guy in the next year or two, he's a guy that I definitely am keeping an eye out on.
Yeah, I see you have on the Illinois gear tonight. Go and tell us about Luke Altmaier.
Yeah, Luke Altmaier just was announced that he is QB1 for the Illini this year. I am wearing the Illini gear. I live 10 minutes from the stadium here, just outside of Champaign, Illinois. So people are really excited about him here. 4-star kid out of Starkville, Mississippi, originally Ole Miss. But you've seen they've just been stacked with transfers and everyone going there. I think he saw the writing on the wall there and wanted to go to a spot where he thought he would have a legit shot to start. DeVito gone at Illinois. I tell you what, DeVito was solid last year for the Illini, but he wasn't a world beater. But people here thought he was, just because the QB play has been so terrible in Champaign over the last decade. I think Altmaier, people are really excited about him. They actually have some weapons around him. They really ran the ball with Chase Brown last year. They still have some really good running backs. We'll talk about coming up here soon. But I also think they finally have some good wide receivers on this team. And so I think Altmaier's a guy to keep an eye on. He's not on anybody's list right now. Obviously, he's going to be his first-year starter, but if he plays well, he's got a chance to start 2 or 3 years in Champaign. And you always like to see a guy that can put multiple seasons together.
Sure. Well, since you mentioned running backs, how about we go ahead and move on to them? Running backs for the Big Ten. All right, here we go. Everybody knows Nick Singleton, Travion Henderson, Braylon Allen, Donovan Edwards, Katron Allen. What past those guys are we looking at here?
Personally, man, I like Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. I think that's a good, solid back. He has some nice speed. It's not necessarily like breakaway speed, but he is winning the foot races and he can get a couple yards on the defender there. And he's hard to take down. He kind of bounces off his the defenders there, and he's smooth enough to has good vision to run between the tackles, but he's also quick enough to get it outside. I think he's just an all-around good back, and he's definitely someone I'm watching now, this season because I think he could do some great things for Iowa there.
Yeah. I'll tell you my favorite who's below those top 5 guys is Caden Fegan out of Illinois. He is Braylon Allen 2.0. Just watch the way he runs, how powerful he is. Plus, he has moves to be able to kind of get be able to kind of get around you in the open field. Him and Braylon Allen had very similar kind of recruiting profiles. Also, they were considered more of a linebacker prospect coming into college, but then once they got on campus, they really took off at that running back spot. I think Caden Fegan's gonna have a big time career there.
Yeah, I love Fegan. People are super excited about him here in Champaign. Everybody really liked Josh McCray coming in last season, backing up Chase Brown, and then he got injured, missed most of the year, and it's almost like he's kind of the forgotten guy. Everyone's already on Fegan, loving what he's bringing to the table. McCray's a guy I really like at the college level, just the size, his ability. My worry about him is speed, whether he's got enough of that breakout speed to really be a difference maker at the NFL level. And again, they really started to pile together some nice running backs at Illinois. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they break up that workload. I mean, it was Chase Brown all day, every day last year. And a lot of that was because of the injury to McCray. I don't think they expected to give him that ball that much. But McCray going out, they kind of gave it to him. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of split that up. And the other guy, I'm really interested because, like you said, match from kind of Braylon Allen, another team we're talking about, new coaching staff. How are they going to use him compared to the old coaching staff? This is a staff that's thrown the ball a lot more at their previous stops than Wisconsin has. And do they try to get Braylon Allen, in space a little more? Do they try to get him in the passing game, which was, as we saw with Jonathan Taylor and other backs at Wisconsin, that just wasn't even in the mix. They didn't even try to get the running backs the ball out of the backfield. So it'll be interesting to see if they do that, if that actually brings a little bit more spark back to Braylon Allen, if he can show that he can catch the ball.
Yeah, well, whenever Phil Longo was at North Carolina, he utilized Ty Chandler really well. So I'm not worried about Braylon Allen's usage. I think he'll be just fine there. And he may actually see some more looks out of the backfield in the passing game.
I think it was last week. There was an article that came out, and they quoted Braylon Allen. He said that he wanted 50 catches this year.
Wow, that would be unbelievable if he got 50 catches this year. He would be. You'd be looking at him as being the potential overall RB1 in CFF.
100%.
He got 35. I mean, he got 35 catches. I think people would be ecstatic about that. And that's why I said for him, I know people have been on him a little bit down, even though he's a pretty highly rated guy. I think if he can prove a little more in this offense, they give him these opportunities, I could see his stock rising right back up to the top.
Sure.
Two guys I want to throw out there that are on the list. They're both probably like the third running back on the team. One is Trayshawn Potts. He transferred from Minnesota to Penn State, so he's backing up Singleton and Allen there. But just a good athlete, and if he gets his shot, he's someone to keep an eye on, especially with the way Penn State has been watching the ball. And then the freshman running back coming into Michigan, Cole Cabana. Originally looking at like a scat type of back, but he realized, this senior year, he kind of ran it through the tackles. He showed he could be a 3-down back, and he's an elusive running back, has some speed. He was a track athlete. I think he placed like third in the state for the track, and he's just a phenomenal athlete, So I think that's someone to keep an eye on. By no means is Donovan Edward and Blake Corum this year, but for your deep leagues that you're trying to look at the future, Cole Cabana is someone you want to keep your eye on.
The one guy I want to mention real quick is Dallin Hayden. I think he's going to have a great opportunity next year because Ohio State, as of right now, they're not bringing anyone in. They're not over-recruiting him, and he showed flashes last year. So I think he's going to be the next guy up in line at Ohio State.
Yeah, I think Ohio State's really comfortable with Hayden and Evan Pryor next year after Williams and Henderson leave. I don't think they're in too much of a hurry to recruit over those guys. You had mentioned Cole Cabana, their SC. I think he needs to. I think he needs to put on some weight. What is he, about 190 right now?
Yeah, definitely. The comp that 247 had on him was James Cook, so
Yeah.
definitely needs to add that weight. But again, I mean, coming in as a freshman, he has some time. He has some time to get bigger, be bulkier, and if he continues to add that weight, but yet still be as elusive as he is as an athlete, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I got you. Well, all right. Well, how about we go ahead and move on to our next position set here? Let's go to wide receivers. All right. Obviously, we have all the Ohio State guys here. It is Ohio State guys, and then everybody else. Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, and then you got the freshman Enos Tate, and Rogers. It's just it really is the Ohio State guys, and then everybody else here. I like Isaiah Williams at Illinois. I think he has big playability. I like Malachi Coleman as a freshman over at Nebraska. We were talking about Wisconsin earlier. I think Will Pauling has a real shot to show how good he is in this Phil Longo offense. Phil Longo loves the slot receiver, and that's what they brought Pauling into play.
I like, we talked about Allar earlier. Who's he throwing to? Keandre Lambert Smith. It's going to be interesting to see what Allar could do with a weapon like that. I've seen almost every play he was just beating the defenders over the top. He's a strong, speedy wide receiver, and he's just talented. He knows how to get the ball at the high point and what to do when the ball's in his hand. So, I'm going to be diving in deeper to see what Allar does to the receivers right around him. Mm-hmm. So Lambert Smith will be interesting to watch. But also, I was really big on Raheem Jarrett last year. Went undrafted, and I blame that on his brother. I blame that on Tagovailoa. He just wasn't as great as a quarterback as I thought. But you have these two wide receivers in Caden Prather and Octavian Smith Jr. that both look like they have some skill set in there. Caden Prather coming over from West Virginia, you didn't hear a lot about him because you have Bryce Ford Whedon, but he was more of a physical raider. He was good awareness. He has some crisp route running. He can catch the ball, has a nice catch radius. You just didn't hear much because Bryce Ford Whedon. I think he could be the top guy there. And then you have Octavian Smith Jr., who was the true freshman last year, but he's has some good body control. When he was looking at his clock time for the 40, it was looking like he was running below a 4.4. This guy is a speed demon, someone that can definitely make the play. Again, I'm worried the quarterback play isn't necessarily going to be there. That's just me not being a fan of the Tagovailoa there. But I think there is some upside with these wide receivers, and they're definitely someone you don't want to say they're bad because the quarterback play is bad. That's something you really got to watch when it comes to wide receivers. Are these wide receivers bad that they're not getting the ball, or is it the quarterback not having the vision to see them wide open? And I think that's what we might see a lot in Maryland.
It's funny you bring that up because there were rumors of an SEC school offering Tagovailoa like $1.5 million to transfer there.
Wow. That would have helped Maryland, in my opinion, and messed up the SAC team. But I mean, that's I think that's just kind of what we said with Arch Manning earlier. When we talked about Big 12, just that legacy kind of deal. You see it in the bloodline, so you think. But for me, when Tagovailoa was in Alabama, Tua, I thought it was a factor if he had good options around him. It wasn't necessarily him being the great QB. It was he had great weapons around him, and that's a personal opinion of mine. But I think we see what he may have done if he was at a school like Maryland with his brother there.
Yeah, sure thing.
Well, and I'll jump into the Illinois guy. I've talked about some of the other guy, Isaiah Williams. People forget he was supposed to kind of be the quarterback. He was a quarterback in high school coming out of St. Louis area, and he was supposed to kind of be that big star for the Illini quarterback to kind of finally save them. He eventually transferred to moved over to wide receiver. And I think, Altmaier can really, can come in and play solid this year. I think you can see Isaiah Williams jumping up some boards a little bit. You haven't seen him on the national stage much at all, with Illinois being pretty terrible until last year. And he's a guy still, learning the nuances of playing wide receiver after being, a highly ranked quarterback coming out of high school. So with a little bit better quarterback play, I think he's a guy that definitely can make a step. Because we have not seen the best of him yet. I think he just is getting better and better. And he's by far, I think, the most athletic guy on that Illinois offense outside of, getting Fegan, the running back, the ball. So he's the guy that I expect to see a big leap in this year. And if Illinois can kind of compete in the West there in the Big Ten, I think he's one of those guys you might see people starting to look at a little bit higher up draft boards because, obviously he gets kind of lost in the mix with all these great Ohio State players.
All right, Andy, go in talk about Michigan for us here. We know you want to talk Michigan.
Not for wide receivers. I'll save that for the tight end spot. But for the wide receivers, a receiver not from Ohio State that I love on this list is Malachi Coleman. I did a Devy Digest profile on him. I absolutely love his tape. He's fast. He's physical. He's just a football player. Plays offense, plays defense. He played defensive end. He does everything for the team. He's pretty much the top recruit for Matt Rule, and his first year there, that's his guy. Jeff Sims at quarterback. I think he's going to do well in that system. But as Malachi Coleman's receiving room, I think he has every opportunity to be the guy there.
Yeah, especially with Betts leaving the team there.
Do you think there's a chance that Malachi Coleman transitions over to play defensive end instead of wide receiver?
I don't think so. If he does, he needs to put on like another 30, 40 pounds. I don't think he will.
Yeah, I think Coleman is strictly a wide receiver, and a really, really good one at that. All right, well, since you wanted to talk tight ends, here we go. Let's go and get into it. All right, here's our tight end list here. We've said it before. Tight end is really kind of a barren wasteland in Devy. You don't really want to take tight end very, very often. There's maybe 2 or 3 tight ends you will end up taking in any Devy draft. You said you wanted to talk about a Michigan one right here. Go ahead and have at it, Andy.
All right. Colson Lovin, a former wide receiver, great hands. He high points the ball. He's going to be the next great Michigan tight end. I think he has all the tools, everything that you want for the NFL. I think he is the guy there. I think you guys have him way too low. For me, as a Devy tight end, I don't scour tight ends that much, but for the ones that I have looked at the top ones, he's currently my tight end 3 overall in Devy.
That's fair.
I actually liked him a lot more than Schoonemaker last year when I watched Michigan games. When I just was watching games played, Loveland looked more natural to me. I was actually surprised when I saw Schoonemaker go as high as he did in the NFL draft. I just thought Loveland was a much better player personally, just watching the game. So I agree with Andy on that one.
Yeah, I'm actually growing more and more fond of the Iowa tight end, Luke Lachey. I think he has every opportunity to really rise up draft boards. He comes from that Iowa really tight end heavy offense. I think he's super talented. Doesn't help. Doesn't hurt that he also comes from a pretty famous family either.
Yeah, I'm on board with you with Lachey too. I think he's someone that we're gonna see climb those boards into possibly being a day 2 pick, just because when you're talking about tight ends, it's very hard. Your offenses in college are mostly your air raid or just your ground and pound, right? But the tight end position is just so you don't see enough of it in college, but he's in a position where you can see him shine. He can be a top receiving option for the team. I think that's just going to help him all around. This guy's just a giant. He's playing basketball in high school, and he's using those abilities that he was using in the post to beat defenders, to get them over the top and just use his strength to body them. Definitely someone I think rises the draft boards, and I think we'll be talking about him, during draft time as a top pick in your, rookie drafts.
And a guy I have listed on here hadn't really played in the last couple of years all that much, transferring to his third school. But if he can get his waiver and he can prove that he's put his issues behind him, Eric Gilbert is going to kill it in that Nebraska offense, and is absolutely going to be a monster at the combine and pro days. And he's a guy who can really shoot up, just skyrocket up draft boards.
Yeah, he's a guy that if it's a 2 tight end, high tight end premium league, I'm taking a flyer on him. If I'm getting him at the end of drafts, or I had a few C2C last year, even though it was looking like he was going to be the 3rd tight end originally at Georgia. I'm just taking him because he's one of those guys that I don't think he needs to produce a ton in college to actually get a shot in the pros. I think there's a chance he gets a shot no matter what, just with his ability and size. So he's definitely a guy that I'm still willing, especially in a Devy, when you don't need him to score like you do in a C2C or a CFF. He's definitely a guy, if I can roster for cheap, I'm going to do it. The other guy you got number 1 on here, Andrew Rapplier. When we talked about our tight end show earlier in the year, we did it. He was my favorite freshman tight end. I know he was ranked. Some people had him somewhere between 5 and 10 freshman tight ends. I just like this guy's tape. He's big. He's tough. Going to Penn State also, just with the success they've had, gives me confidence that they're going to be able to develop him at 6'4", 253 already. One of those guys that doesn't really have to grow into the tight end size. He's already there. So I love that. Like we said, taking a freshman tight end in any kind of Devy scenario is almost, a terrible idea. You just don't want to do it. But if I'm going something deep and I'm taking a guy, or I'm in a C2C where I'm in a redraft, I'm taking the next year, he's a guy I'm looking at. He's a guy I want to fill in there. I'm not expecting much out of him now, but I just think he's got the ability to really shine in the future. And he's just a guy I really liked what I saw out of him coming out of high school.
A reason why I liked Darnell Washington this year is because he was a good run blocker. He can get down the field and make it happen. So to me, it's like, okay, he's going to see the ball a lot more in the Pittsburgh offense because they're going to run heavy with Najee, right? Same thing with the Penn State. Rappley's a great run blocker, and this is a team that's going to use their running backs, right? Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. So we're going to see him on the field a lot because he is fast, he's quick, but he's also very strong to push the linebackers down the field and make that open hole for Singleton or Katron. So I like him a lot, and I think you'll see a lot more of him too. Just circling around because he's going to be on the field, and with that is going to come opportunity for him.
Yeah, I hear you on that, Andy. I didn't really give you an opportunity to talk about your 2 Michigan running backs. Go ahead and tell us about Corum and Edwards, and why one is ahead of the other as far as Devy.
As far as Devy goes, I'm taking Donovan Edwards all day, every day. I think he profiles better. I mean, there are some people that knock him for looking like a wide receiver playing running back. But, I mean, I don't think that's really warranted. I mean, he's over 200 pounds. He's 205 pounds. He runs a little upright, but his hands are incredible. He has the best hands on the team. And the way Michigan uses him, they're not really utilizing him to his best potential. Hopefully this year they'll be able to do that with a 1-2 punch with Corum. But with Donovan Edwards, his hands, I compare them to CMC or Kamara or Saquon. I mean, it's up there. It's elite. So I think for the NFL, they're going to fall in love with him. I mean, I know the NFL doesn't value running backs, so he'll probably go day 2. But with Blake Corum, I think he's more of a CFF play. I think him coming back really hurt. And as a Devy asset, I think it's sinking, to be honest. I love him as a football player. As a Michigan fan, I love him. He is the heart and soul of the team. when he was a true freshman, he reminded me of Mike Hart, his running back coach. He is the heart and soul of the team. But as far as Devy purposes in NFL, he's too small. He's going to come in like 5'6.5", 215, 220 pounds. I don't think he's going to be. Yeah, I mean, I don't see it at the next level. He doesn't have the hands to be a third down back either. So he's just going to be that tweener. He's probably going to go in the 5th, 6th round, and he's just going to fight to make the team, but I don't think he's going to make an impact in the NFL.
I think Donovan Edwards, I have my notes here saying he probably has the best hands in this class coming out, when it comes to running backs, unless Braylon Allen catches 50 and just shows us that he has, these crazy hands out of nowhere, then, that may be a different story. But Donovan Edwards, I think he has the best hands in the running back class.
He had one catch last year where he was running towards the corner of the end zone, the front pylon, kind of twisted around and made like a 360 grab. It was unbelievable, his body control and his hands and hand-eye coordination. And I think that's kind of what the NFL looks for in their running backs, honestly. They don't look for big plotters. They look for guys who can hit that corner, who can go, who can catch the ball out of the backfield and be real dynamic in their offense. I think Edwards is that type of dude.
Well, and everybody talks about wear and tear on these running backs anymore, and Edwards is going to be that guy that's going to go in the NFL with not a ton of, tread on the tires. I mean, he's been behind Corum. He's making plays. He just feels like that guy that the NFL wants right now at running back. They don't got to spend a ton to get him, but he's got the skill set they want. And to me, that's where he jumps up Devy boards for me, just because I think he's going to get a decent landing spot. He's probably a day 2 guy, maybe early 2nd round. He feels like he could be that steal where somebody gets him like mid to early 2nd round and everybody's like losing their mind because they're like, oh, this guy's going to be awesome. I can't believe we got him in that spot. He just feels like that to me. But that's why I love him for Devy purposes. He just feels like he has an NFL game.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any notes on these players for tonight?
I will talk real quick if we want to jump into the tight ends. There's some talented guys for Ohio State. It's just Ohio State has been one of those hardest teams to judge tight ends over the last couple of years, just because they don't use them a lot in their passing game because they've got so many talented wide receivers. So they've definitely got guys that have, they've got that 4 or 5 star ratings. They've had some really talented guys over the years. It's just so hard to figure out those guys who are going to translate to the NFL and how they're going to be used at the NFL level. So I'm always looking at the tight ends. I never want to skip over an Ohio State tight end just in case, but I feel like those guys are so hard to pick, because I think Stover is a guy that reminds me a little bit of Ruckert from a couple years ago. He's still a guy that's got a shot in the NFL. He's kind of deep down the depth chart for the Jets right now, but it's like those guys have ability, they have size, and so it's just trying to see if they're going to end up in a decent situation. I think is always tough, because you don't want to just ignore them because they are athletes, but it's just, you just don't get to see a lot in that system, which I think makes it difficult to kind of judge them going on the NFL level.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and with that, to follow up, in every C2C startup that I've done this year, I'm always walking away with Jelani Thurman at the end. He's available in like past round 30, so I'm always taking him just as a flyer. So just in case.
Do you, with the news of Oregon and Washington joining Big 10, do you think that affects your Ohio State or your Michigan's recruiting class? Do you think Ohio State's going to lose up on getting these top wide receivers that they'll want to go elsewhere? Or do you think they're going to continue to just dominate when it comes to positions like that?
I think they'll be fine. I think Michigan's going to be the one that has to transition, because with Michigan, they are still doing that old school smash mouth football, just run it down your throat, have a quarterback who's a game manager, even though he's, right now, JJ McCarthy, if they let it loose, he can make plays. To me, he is like a Quinn Ewers. They're so polarizing. They show flashes of NFL throws, but then they'll do boneheaded mistakes. And it's just from not being able to go all out, because Harbaugh just wants to run the ball. He just wants to run the ball, focus on the defense. And with USC coming in, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, all that high-powered offense, I think that's going to force Harbaugh to get actual wide receivers with speed. And I think Michigan has to adapt. I think they're the one that has to adapt, and if they don't, they're going to be left behind. And I'm a lifelong Michigan fan, and I'm saying that. As far as Ohio State, no concerns. Ohio State, they recruit the best. They will still recruit the best. So no concerns with them.
Yeah, I think Ohio State's kind of proven themselves to be wide receiver U. So I don't think they're ever going to have any issue with recruiting wide receivers with Hartline there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hartline was fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, to go along with what Andy said, I agree with them because Michigan's they've been able to run the system they've been able to run just because they're just more talented than a lot of their teams. So, Illinois, Iowa, they try to do exactly what Michigan does, but they're just like, hey, we know we're not as talented, but if we can run the ball, we can play defense, we can beat these lower tier teams just below us in the rankings. And I think the issue for them is they're not really competing at the same level for some of those athletes that Michigan is actually competing for. And I think the problem you're going to get is if Michigan doesn't somehow figure out how to be a little more explosive offensively, that's where they're going to start falling behind on that talent gap. Because right now they're getting all those guys. But, you're a wide receiver, you're a running back, you're some of these other positions. You want to go where you think you can make the NFL. You want to go where it's high flying. You're going to go to USC. You're going to go to Wisconsin. You're going to go to Wisconsin. You're going to go to Oregon. You're going to go to Washington. You're going to go to Ohio State. So where Michigan's gotten away with it just by being able to get better players and kind of bully people around, I think that, like Andy said, that is the one team that if they want to continue to get those high-end, top-of-the-line, 5-star guys, they're going to have to slightly adjust more than anyone else. The rest of the Big Ten, I think, the Illinois, the Iowas, the Michigan States, they're going to do kind of what they do as a second-tier teams in the league and try to beat the teams below them because they're just not going to ever, be on that Michigan, Ohio State level. I'm sorry for other Big Ten fans. I know it's sacrilege, but it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. People just need to realize that once every decade you might have a team that's going to compete. You're never going to be on that level nationally. And so Michigan, I think, has the most to lose with all this transition.
Well, let's kind of call it what it is here. That the Big Ten has been trying to compete with the SEC for years now, which is why they have gone out and grabbed USC and UCLA and Oregon and Washington, because they want those top echelon teams, because the majority of their conference outside of their top 3 teams, which Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, they're really kind of mid-tier, lower-tier teams. So those 3 programs are always going to beat up on those lesser schools. Mm-hmm. Now with Washington and USC and Oregon coming in, they're going to have to face better competition. So to your point, that's going to force Michigan to have to kind of recruit better, to recruit better athletes.
One thing that's going to hurt, with USC specifically, weather-wise, where do you want to play? Do you want to play in Michigan or in Ohio, or do you want to play in SoCal, Southern California, which will just be a huge leeway for them to say, you're going to get the Big Ten kind of playing time on the TV and stuff, but, you're living in Southern California now. So it's going to be interesting, seeing these recruiting class change up and seeing if that plays a huge factor of them jumping into a different conference, and vice versa with these teams being added. Are these teams still going to do it, or are people going to say, I want to play in Southern California, I want to go to the beaches in SoCal and stuff like that to have that opportunity. So it's exciting and it's fun. It's just what it's going to do for the college realm, and as you mentioned, being that second competition to the SEC.
I think it's kind of the rich getting richer with some of these programs. With USC and you got UCLA and Oregon and Washington coming in. If they want to go recruit New York, New Jersey, or whatever, if they want to get the best athlete out of there, those athletes aren't going to go to Rutgers. Those athletes aren't going to go to Indiana. They're not going to go. They're not going to go to Maryland. They're going to go to these big name programs, and that's really going to make these other kind of mid to lower tier teams even more lower tier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's going to be the questions. Like, do the rough and tumble, like we talked about, do the Iowas, the Illinois, the Wisconsins, that were known for running the ball, getting big linemen, can those teams compete now? All of a sudden, they're looking at half their schedules against an Oregon, a Washington, a USC, a UCLA. Like, can they still do that? Because before they're like, hey, all I got to do is be a little bit better than Michigan State. I got to be a little bit better than Iowa. Now it's so many other teams they got to compete and diversifying styles. It's just going to be really interesting, especially recruiting landscape. Are you going to get a lot of these kids that went to Big Ten schools because they're from around here? Do they maybe start thinking about some of those West Coast schools because they know they're going to be back here playing all the time? Their parents are going to still be able to watch them on TV. They're still going to be able to show up to games. And you never know with high school kids what they're thinking on that type of stuff and not. But it'll be interesting to see if that changes the dynamic of some of these other old school Big Ten teams, whether that really affects who they're able to recruit and not. If they lose some of those kids to those other schools, or does it strengthen now that they say, hey, you're going to get to play all these other schools in different areas? Does that help or hurt them? I'm just not 100% sure which way that's going to go yet.
Well, I can tell you what a lot of these kids are thinking now, and it's money.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at Williams Nwaneri, who just committed to Missouri. Missouri passed this NIL law that high schoolers are now able to be paid through the NIL collectives from the school. So if it like in-state recruits in Missouri, there's more incentive for them to go there now. Whereas,
I think
prior to, they weren't going to go there.
Yeah, I think you saw it with the Quinn Ewers when he originally went to Ohio State. And then, I think he wanted to go to Texas the whole time, but he went to Ohio State because he could get the NIL money right away.
Mm-hmm.
I think Missouri saw that and said, hey, what can we do that, obviously we're a mid-level team in the SEC at best. What can we do to kind of try to keep some of these kids? Because everybody's recruiting East St. Louis, Kansas City, not just Missouri. So I think you're going to see more and more moves until somebody makes it more of a national thing. I think you're going to see more moves like this where some of these schools figure out they got to do something to give themselves a leg up over other schools.
Yeah. We were talking about the Missouri commit the other day. I'm going to be real surprised if somebody like Ryan Wingo doesn't stay in state also because of this.
From all the Missouri guys I know that I went to school with that cover Missouri, they're feeling pretty good about the chances of getting him.
Yeah,
which I would be really surprised in the past. I'd be like, yeah, maybe we're in the, as a Missouri fan, we're maybe in the top 5, but we're not going to get that guy. We're just happy to be on the list that he's talking about us. But they feel pretty confident that they got a chance to get it.
Well, and it's crazy because it almost seems like he wants to come to Knoxville. He's been here like 10 times on visits, but just the allure of that NIL money and being able to stay in state, I think that's going to keep him.
Can you imagine with Missouri if they do keep, or if they get Wingo and they have Burden, but they can't get a quarterback?
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
Well, Missouri, they've been in that same spot. I feel like Illinois is in. They've been able to get some good talent around there. They've been able to get really good defensive players the last couple of years. Guys going to the NFL, guys playing and being good in the NFL. But they are just in this quarterback hell where they just can't ever seem to get a top-tier guy. I mean,
it's been a long time since Chase Daniels.
Chase Daniel, one of my all-time favorite guys. I'll tell everybody that. I love Chase Daniel. I mean, just one of the best careers ever. But, dude, it's been a long time since Chase Daniel was around. I mean, in Illinois, it's been a long time since Juice Williams was here. I mean, a long time. And the fact that they just can't seem to get that QB, it just baffles me. Everybody thought it was going to be Horn. They're hoping it's Horn. I don't know if it is, but I know Missouri fans were hoping he would be the guy. And I think that's where you got Illinois fans like maybe Altmaier can be that guy for us. But it's like, yeah, it's crazy how some programs just can't ever seem to get that one position.
I know Missouri has a plan to kind of alternate their, in between Horn and.
Well, they got Horn, Cook, and Garcia.
Cook, yeah. In between Horn and Cook in their week 1 matchup. So I know that they wanted to be Horn. He was a higher profile high school recruit coming in. He kind of switched off to baseball there for a while and then came back to football. He's got a big arm, so I know that that's pretty enticing for them.
Yeah, I know fans reading the message boards, everybody on Twitter for Missouri, they want Horn to win this job. They really do. But it's like Brady Cook, it's like he just has those little intangibles. And it's crazy because he's not terrible, but he's not great. But he does just enough.
He's a good runner.
He's good enough.
Just good enough that you kind of like don't feel like he's lost the job. But it's like, man, is he making everybody better? No, probably not. Is he going to take you where you want to go? Probably not. But he's a lifelonger, grew up a Missouri fan. It's like, and like some of these schools, like that matters to people in the Midwest. It matters that you grew up a Missouri fan and you always wanted to play there and your family loves the school and they went there. Like, nobody cares about that at Ohio State. They're like, you're the number one player in the country. We don't give a crap if you ever knew who Ohio State was before you got here. They don't care. Yeah. But that stuff matters at places like Missouri. It just does. So it's going to be interesting because, again, Missouri and Illinois, very similar in that they both have really good defenses. They have some studs that could end up being really high NFL draft picks coming up this year. The question is, do they have the quarterbacks to put them over the top? Because they got a lot of talent on both those squads. But it's like, are they going to both be 6-6 again? Or are they actually going to be able to get to a 9-win season? That's the question.
Problem is that they have to play these big time programs. Like Missouri has to play, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia every year. Illinois has to play Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. So there is a ceiling for these programs because they have to play higher end competition.
Well, and I feel like they're playing the schedule game every year. It's like, oh, this year we didn't get Michigan on the schedule. Oh, this year we didn't get Ohio State. Now we got a shot. And if that's how you have to play it, you'll take your wins. But, man, it's always rough when you're playing the schedule game of, like, this year we don't have two of the best teams in the nation on our schedule in our own conference, so we're lucking out. And
sometimes
you're never going to compete that way.
Sometimes in some games, though, you don't necessarily need to win. You just need to look good, right? You don't need to go out there and beat your Ohio States, beat your Georgias. You just need to not get blown out. You need to actually look like you're a competition for them to say, okay, there's some coaching staff going on here, some schemes going on that are working, So it's when it comes to your quarterbacks watching them play those big time games, it's like, okay, we're looking at the mistakes you're going to make, and are they visible mistakes you could have avoided, or is it just the defenses are that good that we're playing against that it was going to happen regardless, right? So you got to see those kind of games more so as that, all right, let's not chalk up a loss. Let's see how we're going to win as far as what we're going to do with this offense and move forward with it.
Yeah. Well, that it definitely helps recruiting if you're able to hang in there with these big time programs also, because they see you in a different light. Big time recruits aren't going to want to go to a place that's just getting hammered every week, which is why Vanderbilt is never a big time program. They don't get big time recruits because they always get killed every week. They may have certain years where they may step up and beat a Florida like they did last year. But guess what? Florida last year wasn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
When Florida's good, they're not beating them.
Right.
They're not beating Georgia. They're not beating, when Tennessee is good, Vanderbilt's not beating them. So it's just kind of one of those things that these lesser programs are never going to be able to rise up because they're never able to show that they can consistently hang with those big programs.
Right.
And it really doesn't matter how much money that they throw into it, because they're just never going to be able to find their way out of the basement.
Yeah, I talk about this, and it drives Illinois and Missouri fans crazy. But I was like, they should be consistently shooting for a 7-5, 8-4, and that is a huge win. Mm-hmm. If you get to a double-digit win once a decade, that's huge. I know people's like, oh, that's all you think we can win? I'm like, yeah, actually, winning double digits once a decade is probably really good. And making a bowl game almost every year, 8-4, 6-6 every down year, those are what they need. They got to avoid those, 3-9 years. But those programs are never going to be Ohio State. They're never going to be Michigan. I don't care what they do. I don't care how many good seasons they put together in a row. They just don't have the tradition. They're just never going to be. Are they going to have years where they can beat them? Yes, but it's going to be once a decade where they have their best team and maybe they just catch a team off. But they're just not going to be those programs, and people got to understand that, and they got to be a little more realistic. You can still root for your team. You can still want them to win, but you got to be a little more realistic as a college football fan.
Yeah, programs like Illinois, Minnesota, Indiana, Northwestern, they have to really be kind of quote unquote cycle up programs where you're going to be, you're going to hover around that 5-7 to 7-5 range. And then once every 4 to 5 years, you're going to jump up and maybe win 8-9 games.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think.
Go ahead.
I think it's like Kentucky. I think with Kentucky, if they win 8 games, I think Mark Stoops automatically gets 1 year added onto his contract and like bonuses or whatever it is. So like, be Kentucky, be happy with 8 wins.
Right. That's exactly right, because teams like Kentucky put more of their emphasis on basketball. They don't necessarily care about football. Even their AD doesn't necessarily care about football. He's even come out publicly and said, "Listen, 8-9 wins, we're great with that," because they know that they're never going to be any better.
And I think, what he's saying is like just being able to keep a coach and stay consistent for those programs are more important than anything else. If you're Illinois, do what you can to keep Brett Bielema around. If you can keep him around, you're going to be better for it. Because these middling programs, you just can't switch coaches all the time. You just can't. You can't build any momentum that way. And I know Missouri fans they like to hammer Eli, but I mean, the more he plays, the longer he stays there, the better they can be. The smartest thing Missouri did was keep Gary Pinkel around as long as they did. Even though he had some down years, especially in the beginning, the smartest thing they did was keep him around because those consistencies for those programs makes a huge difference. That's where, Michigan State, Minnesota, you got to get solid coaches. You got to hope that those guys can get decent recruits and that they win enough where your fan base doesn't force you to fire them. Because turnover is the worst thing you can have at the middle programs. You got to have consistency at the head coach position.
On the flip side of that, Michigan State really screwed themselves by giving their head coach $9 million a year
for 10 years.
Yes,
yeah, right.
Yes. That was a misjudgment on their part, big time.
Win some, you lose some.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Well, all right. Well, guys, go ahead and tell us where we're able to find you at. JT, go and start us off.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, or the X Twitter is what I like to call it now. JT Orange. I do a little bit of everything. Devy show here every other Monday on Dynasty Pros. You can find me on the Stew with JT Brew, also on the Dynasty Pros YouTube channel. Got a couple gambling segments coming up, so look for those here shortly. And then I do all kinds of IDP content, rankings, stuff like that on DLF. So if you're a member there, you can check out my IDP stuff over there.
SC.
You can find me on X at the PPR show, doing Devy shows with these guys, hopping on JT's Brew every now and again as well. Find some articles on RPO football, and then during football season, I'll be hopping on with FF Mad Scientists during the week, every week to talk about some football, whether it be waiver wires or trades, and exciting stuff coming from that soon.
I'm going to introduce Andy here. Andy Pham just came on to Dynasty Pros Football a couple weeks ago, and he has absolutely been killing it with putting out quality content for us. We really appreciate him coming on. Andy, go and tell us who you are, buddy.
Well, I'm just a guy. Started writing content. Just felt that there was a void in the Devy space for guys that are lesser known, so I started to write content. Just dumb luck. I was, lucky enough to, come on to Dynasty Pros and, writing content for you guys through the Devy Digest. You can find me at Andy_Pham1. You can find my Devy Digest articles with Dynasty Pros, man. Just, yeah.
Yeah, you've been putting out just unbelievable content lately, and we've got several more scheduled over the next few days, actually. So we're thrilled with it. Everybody just needs to keep an eye out for it. He's bringing them on. Just he keeps pumping them out, and we're super stoked about it. But that is going to be it for tonight, guys. We will see you next time.